a volcano which erupted over 150,000 years ago, the highest peak of Africa, one of the 7 summits, Kilimanjaro. It stands at 5,895 meters above the sea level. According to one of the theories, its name originates from Swahili and it means a shining mountain. Sparkles of its glaciers attract thousands of people every year. We could not resist, too. It was a long trip to Tanzania. I had to cross half of the globe and spent 2 nights on airplanes to successfully land at Kilimanjaro International Airport. Alex's journey was a roller coaster. The first leg of his flight got delayed, which meant that he was going to miss all the subsequent flights. Fortunately, altogether we managed to reschedule them last minute. Despite all the challenges, he eventually joined me in Moshi town, which serves as a stopover for those who aspire to climb Kili. The next morning, we jumped on the minibus, which was going to bring us to the gate of Kilimanjaro National Park to start our climb. The gate to the national park is a very busy place. The porters are going to weigh their duffel bags. Local regulations do not allow them to carry more than 15 kilograms to protect their labor and to create more jobs. Out of many routes to the top, we chose the Lemosho route. One of the biggest advantages of this route was that it lay across multiple climate zones, from the rainforest which was flourishing with life, all the way to the deserted Arctic zone near the summit. The first day was nice and easy. We had to hike only 7 kilometers over a steep slope and gain about 550 vertical meters. We spent our first night at Mweka camp.
Приветики, пистолетики. Тысяча одна ночь Шахерезады.
On the second day, we said goodbyes to the monkeys, which were in a constant search for food, left our cozy camp in the middle of the jungles, and set off to Shira plateau. It was supposed to be a challenging day. First, we had to climb a steep passage to the plateau at 3,500 meters. Then we would face a steady and long path to the camp. The entire distance was going to be 17 kilometers. Thick jungles soon were replaced by the bushland and the beautiful view was unlocked. Soon we could see the second highest peak of Tanzania, Mount Meru. Then, for the first time since the beginning of the climb, we saw the main dome of Kilimanjaro, which soon disappeared behind the clouds. We reached the intermediate Camp Shira 1 around 1:30 in the afternoon to have lunch and take a short break. Alex took a nap because he still felt under the weather since his arrival. We gained about 1,000 vertical meters and felt really tired. Based on our condition, it would have been the right place to stop for the day. However, we had to push on to Shira 2 camp, which meant another 10 kilometers on a steady ascent through the plateau, and it didn't give us much optimism. Dust needs a dedicated chapter in this story. The entire surface of the volcano is covered in dust. Dust follows climbers from the gate up to the summit. It covers different parts of the body, penetrates deeply into clothes, and everything smells like dust after a while. One day, We could even taste the dust in the drinking water.
Наша история была бы неправдоподобной без этих кадров. Сегодня мы прошли второй день, 17 километров, поднялись чуть больше 1000 вертикальных метров. Вот. Был очень тяжелый день, мы оба чувствовали себя довольно плохо. Вот, Леха. Вот я, болит голова, тошнота. Но позади вот показалась вершина.
On the next day, we did not feel relieved. My nausea did not subside in the morning. On top of that, we both had a headache, all the typical symptoms of altitude sickness. The plan for the day wasn't too promising either. We were going to hike to Lava Tower and gain another 700 vertical meters.
Какие твои впечатления от третьего дня?
Не пером сказать, не сказкой описать.
After having lunch next to the tower of solid lava, we started descending to our next camp for the night. The more we descended, the better it became. Suddenly, we started feeling much better, and we finally took our time to behold the beauty around us and to pay attention to the details. Meet one of our guides. His name is Amos. He's introducing me to the local flora. One of the noticeable species is a water-holding cabbage, which resembles a pineapple. As I read long after the climb, this peculiar tree is endemic to the Kilimanjaro region. It emerged in the age of dinosaurs, and it hasn't changed much since. But even without this knowledge, when you walk amongst these giant trees, it does feel like you're in the middle of the lost world. Slowly, we reached our next camp called Barranco. A couple of other routes merge in this camp, which makes it pretty crowded and slightly noisy. The second night at 3,900 meters was going to be another stepping stone in our acclimatization plan. The improvement in our condition was obvious.
Так, сегодня у нас на ужин рис, был суп, ну вот на второй рис, бобы, овощное рагу и по бананчику. И будет чай из имбиря. Вот. Плюс-минус у нас такой ужин и обед каждый день. То есть есть горячая суп и горячая еда, как второе. Там картошка, рис. Мы очень довольны этим аспектом.
On day 4 we were going to scramble to the Barranco wall, which stands at 4,200 meters above sea level. The height of the wall is just about 300 meters. We were looking carefully at the wall in an attempt to find the route. The way to do it was to find climbers scattered across the track and to draw an imaginary line between them. From the bottom the wall looked very high, difficult and fairly dangerous. However, it was a typical case when the first impression was deceptive, and it looked much worse than it actually was. We folded up our hiking poles because we wouldn't need them in the next couple of hours, and headed to the foot of the wall. At that time, the sunlight divided the wall into two even passages, the lower part which was still in the shadow, and the higher half, which was much warmer. Personally, I found this wall one of the most entertaining parts of the entire journey. It wasn't boring at all because we had to scramble a lot, think about our next moves, and keep our balance. Apart from that, quite often we had to dodge the passing porters, who were quicker than most of us, even on such steep ascent.
Hakuna Matata.
Una matata Kilimanjaro.
Hakuna Matata.
Леха?
Hakuna Matata is by far one of the most popular phrases on the track. In Swahili, it means no problem. Another just as popular word was jambo. Jambo means hello. Surprisingly, we both experienced the same thing, although we hadn't spoken about it. Every time we heard jambo, it triggered in our heads the song from Tarantino's
Django, have you always been alone? Django, Django, have you never loved again? Love will live on, life must go on, for you cannot spend your life regretting.
When we reached the top of the wall, we came very close to the main dome of Kilimanjaro. The weather was great, so we decided to take a long break to enjoy the view and to acclimatize a little bit more. In the afternoon, we descended to another camp at 3,900 for the night.
Лёха, как прошел наш сегодняшний день?
Проснулись с легонькой горняшкой. Сделали набор высоты метров на 300, наверное. Потом еще нам надо было идти какое-то время. Я, конечно, думал, что будет меньше. В целом день прошел неплохо. Единственное, что меня смущает, то что я по-прежнему чувствую себя не очень хорошо. Я чувствую, что есть горняшечка легенькая. Но надеюсь, что третья ночь на одинаковой высоте, плюс-минус, должна дать свои плоды, и завтра все будет хорошо.
The morning of our 5th day on the mountain was pretty chilly. Our tents were covered in frost. We woke up feeling stronger and waited for our warm water to arrive.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning to you. Are you
Good. A little bit cold.
sleeping well?
Yeah.
The plan for the day was to go to Barafu base camp, which was sitting at 4,700 meters. The base camp would be our last camp before the summit attack, which was planned for the next night. This meant that we would spend half a day getting to the camp, and the second half would be dedicated to resting and preparing for the summit push.
Oh la la la.
Una matata. Super duper.
Based on our experience with other peaks, we were concerned about two aspects. Firstly, on the summit night, we would have to gain over 1,200 vertical meters, which is a lot at these altitudes. Secondly, the Barafu camp was going to be the highest point of our climb before the summit attempt. As a result, the anxiety was building up, which is typical at this stage of the climb. The best tranquilizer in this situation was to put our phones aside, to get out of the tent and behold the beauty around us. We came really close to the second peak of Kili, which is called Mweka. Generally, Kilimanjaro is comprised of 3 peaks that are left after 3 different eruptions. They are Shira, Mweka and Kibo, which is the highest of all 3. After the early dinner and sunset, we jumped into our sleeping bags at least to try to have a few hours of sleep before the summit push.
Привет. Ну что, Лёх, групповая стадия отыграна, полуфиналы отыграны, остался финал. Но, как сказал Рой Кин, экс-футболист Манчестер Юнайтед, финалы приносят удовольствие только тогда, когда они выиграны. Мне добавить нечего.
A summit attack started around midnight. We were calm, composed, and fully concentrated. We had a huge task to climb up 1,200 vertical meters. With every step, the amount of oxygen was going to decrease to reach only 48% at the summit. For the next 6 to 7 hours, every single minute of our climb was going to look like this.
No, I turned wrong, left your heart torn. Is that what devils do? Took you so long, where only fools go. I shook the angel in you. Now I'm rising from the crowd, rising up to you. Filled with all the strength I found, there's nothing I can't do.
We reached the Uhuru Peak around 7 a.m. and congratulated each other. Alex arrived first and 5 minutes later I joined him. The ascent took a toll on us. Our guide Stanley's approach was to have the absolute minimum number of breaks. No matter how slow, we had to keep moving at all times.
We did it.
Although we felt very well in the first few hours, it changed once we passed approximately 5,400 meter mark. We started falling asleep, which made it really difficult to keep our balance on a steep slope. On top of that, it was tough to keep up with the pace that Stanley had set. We were running out of energy and our minds were foggy. Time seemed to pass at a very strange and a slow pace. Once we reached the edge of the crater at Stella Point, Alex felt euphoric and increased his pace. However, halfway through the rim, gravity pulled him back. When I was about to reach the summit, I had exactly two questions. First, why on earth did we keep such a high pace on the way up and spend so much energy? And the second, exhausted and drained, how were we going to descend? At that time, both questions were rather rhetorical. We were standing at the top of Kilimanjaro, on the edge of the crater, surrounded by shining glasses and covered by the volcanic ash and dust, which had been resting here since violent eruptions from the distant past. The endless carpet of clouds was spreading beyond the horizon. Our foggy consciousness could not conceive the scale of that moment. Nevertheless, we were enjoying its haunting beauty and inhaled the thin air to the full capacity of our lungs. The moment at the top was coming to an end, and the only job that still remained was to take a few pictures before heading down to the base camp. We were very concerned by the fact that our minds were blurry and cloudy. Alex used the last bit of his energy to go down as quickly as he could, and he reached the base camp at 9:30. My descent took much longer. My legs felt no strength, and as a result I was sliding on the gravel and dust. In order to reduce the risk, I slowed down considerably and passed the steep passages not without the help of our guide Amos. Two of our porters came to meet us not far away from the base camp, to which we all returned at 11:15. Unfortunately, it wasn't over. We were going to take a short break and continue to descend to the lower camp at 3,000 meters. At that time I thought I wouldn't be able to go anywhere on that day. I did my best to buy us some more time to rest. I was eating very slowly, I took ages to pack my bag. But to my surprise the further descent went smoothly, and we arrived at Mweka camp before sunset. It is hard to describe how sweet were our dreams on that night. We woke up fully recovered and ready for a nice and easy trek down to the gate of the national park. The memories of the summit seemed to be far in the past. To be precise, it felt like it was only a dream. Our foggy minds kept neither vivid memories nor a coherent story. After a long discussion, and with the help of our photos and videos, we managed to connect all the dots and reconstruct the entire sequence of events. As we climbed down, we were moving further away from the shining glaciers, but we were getting closer to the endless expanse of the African savanna. We took our time to stop and enjoy the views. Some people, however, were in a rush. Throughout the entire expedition, we were supported by a large team that set a strong foundation for our success. Our guides, Stanley and Amos, led us from the jungles all the way to the top and back. Our chef cooked us hot meals, which gave our bodies enough fuel. Our porters carried all the heavy loads, set up the tents, and brought the drinking water from the creeks. We are eternally grateful for such a strong support.
Walizunguka, 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 wataka kulila nyama. Kilimanjaro, 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 mlima mrefu sana. Kama wenzi, kama wenzi, kama wenzi, kama wenzi, mlima mrefu sana. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni, wageni, mwakaribishwa. Wapi? Kilimanjaro, hakuna matata. Tembea pole pole, hakuna matata.
After a few days we left Moshi town and said goodbye to Kilimanjaro. The mountain welcomed us and gave us an unforgettable experience. Volcanoes have their special charm and unique personality. Volcanoes do not like to be crammed into the mountain ranges. Volcanoes like the expanse and the symmetry. In the depth of their craters, they keep the stories about gigantic eruptions, and they witness how life was changing on our planet. From now on, Kilimanjaro is going to keep one more story, the story of our climb, just as carefully as we will.
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni, wakaribisha. Kilimanjaro, hakuna matata. Tembea pole pole, hakuna matata.